And so I want to welcome everybody today to another episode of Pathfinder. My name is Tommy Soares. I'm Assistant Director of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And it is my honor, my pleasure of inviting Vivek Badwaik to join us today. Analytical chemist, analytical scientist at Corteva Agriscience, right? Tell us a little bit about this, Vivek. Tell us a little bit about maybe your background. We want to know a little bit about what was your journey to get you to where you are today, and then maybe we can start picking and probing you a little bit further for some other spots. So really welcome. It's a pleasure having you. It's been a while since I've seen you, and it's good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you again, Tommy, and it's a huge pleasure and honor for me to be invited for this talk. So, hi everyone, I am Vivek Badwaik. To go back to my journey, born and brought up in India, I did my bachelor's of pharmacy from Nagpur, which is in Maharashtra state. That's where I'm born and brought up as well. From there, I was always interested in pharmaceutical analysis or the analytical chemistry, and I joined WKU for my master's. It's in Bowling Green, Western Kentucky University. I got really interested in nanomedicine, and I was able to contribute towards the antibacterial activity of nanoparticles. After that, I was looking for grad schools, and Purdue was obviously one of the top choice I had, and luckily I got there as well. And after doing my master's, I was more interested in taking the analytical and biology portion together, so more bioanalytical sciences. And I joined Dr. David Thompson group, where I was able to contribute to the gene delivery projects. Little did that I knew that what I was working there could have been a Moderna project. But we are trying to deliver using non-viral vectors like polymers into the cells for cancer therapy. From there, after my graduation, I had a really good opportunity to work at a really nice facility called Bindi Bioscience at Purdue, thanks to Tommy. There I worked in the core mass spec facility for 5 to 6 months, where I got a really good experience in running mass spectrometry, LC-MS experience. Now, using all this background, I was looking for other opportunities, industrial opportunities, and something that fascinated with me at Dow, now it's Corteva, was the opportunity to leverage my background to solve some agrochemical problems or challenges. So I joined there in 2017, and since then I've been with the company till now, and I've been helping using my bioanalytical skills to solve multiple problems, more specifically anything related to the metabolism or metabolite identification.
Awesome. And I just want to say, I didn't do anything. I just introduced you, and you are the one that, with your own merit, you got that position at the Binley, and you did fantastic. And I'm glad that I was able to make that connection happen, because it worked out very well, I think, for the Binley Bioscience Center to have you there, as well as it worked out for you. But this is really interesting. I'm fascinated how you really went from very different disciplines and molded this into and fashioned this into an area of expertise that you have encompassed in all the ways. So now you're doing more metabolite analysis in plants, right?
Plants and animals as well.
Okay, animals that eat the plants and so on and so forth. Oh, that's really cool. And are you at all, you're doing from what perspective is that? Is that a nutritive perspective? Is that an exposure to chemicals perspective? How does that work?
That's a really great question. So I work in a team called Predictive Safety Center. what happens is we have thousands of molecules that we are screening for efficacy in the discovery team, where they are looking potential molecules which can be a pesticide. But our team is basically stopping them. Hey, hold on, let us test the safety of these molecules, and that's where I am. So primarily, when we are developing a molecule, we are looking into the toxicity of the molecule. However, once it is within the plant and once it is within the animal, it's not a parent molecule anymore. It breaks down into metabolite, and looking into safety or toxicity of those metabolites is crucial too. And that's where that's where my job relies. Not only looking into how that molecule is breaking down, but what it is breaking down into, and then provide that information to the next stakeholders like tox people, where they will look into the toxicity of it.
Nice. That's so interesting, so neat. So you get to really look at further downstream processes that might be affected too, and how the metabolites might contribute or not to this toxicity profile. That's really interesting. Tell me something, Vivek. You've been at Corteva since 2017.
Mhm.
It's about 5 years now. What do you see has been your formula for success in the last 5 years in industry? And there's more to that question that I'll get into. I'll get into in a little bit.
Sure. It's definitely multiple things, but most important thing that I found was communication. So not only, as a scientist, we tend to deep dive into our own world, but that may not mean anything to someone else. So how to bridge that gap is very important. So not only what science you are doing, but what you do with it. I think that has been something I find it very important. Apart from that, I think just the in general curiosity takes it long way, because um, as I just explained, the discipline I work in, I have to know what the talks people will do with what I'm doing, what the formulation team will do with the science I'm doing. So I think I always been very curious and what they are going to do with my information and what they do in general, and so that I would say the thirst to constantly learn is always been very helpful, so that what I'm doing can have a better impact.
That's awesome. And so, can you tell me a little bit about how you've gone about improving some of the communication skills so that you can bridge better between all these people?
Sure. I think very early on I realized that, and that is, it might be just me or it may be just my transition from academics to industry, that many times people ask questions and it's very important to know what exact information they need. And I have a really good example where somebody has presented it last time. It's basically, if somebody comes to you that saying that he is thirsty, you can do two things. You can give that person a glass of water, or you can point a hose on its mouth. So you know which is going to be pleasant. So when you are really deep down in your own world of science, you really want to talk about it, but the next person who's asking, maybe he doesn't need to know all of it. So controlling that passion, and it's not that anything bad about talking about science, but if you want to make the communication efficient, you need to look into very simple words to explain what you do in really simple language. And then once that person is curious, we can keep go deep and diver. So I would say slowly I realized that you don't need to always write long emails. Just pick a phone or just walk to the person and say yes or no. Uh, Emailing can take forever. So just knowing, if the many times the next person just need to know yes or no, it may not need all explanation. So I guess slowly I tried to learn what's the I guess listening to what the next person would say is the most important skill.
I, I love those little tidbits of information and guidance, because That's very true. You got to call, pick up the phone, call people, walk over, say hello, do a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, or something, right?
Right.
And so, what does it look like for a scientist to be successful? What are some of the traits of a successful scientist in industry?
Okay. So again, another good question, Tommy. I did have opportunity to people who have, received multiple awards, patents. So I would call them successful scientists here. And I think the most important trait that I have seen in them is one is the practicality, and second is the adaptiveness. So they are excellent scientists by far. However, when it comes to a solution, they are not trying to come up with the best science, but they're coming with the most practical science. To give an example, I know someone who received multiple awards because he was able to save millions to Dandao. Basically, we were looking, I guess they were looking into, there was increase in the raw material for making a particular pesticide, and they were looking into best solutions. So this person was able to come with the best solution. And when I talked to him, that person mentioned that there were other inputs too, and his input was not the best reaction mechanism by far. Other people probably had better science, but his reaction were consisting of the cost parameter and the efficiency parameter, how fast I can do it. So I would say even though he know all the best reaction mechanism, but the one which will give the quickest and the cheapest way and still give good quality product, that was something helped him achieve what he is. So practicality, and second I think is adaptability. It's a cliche, to survive you have to adapt, but I believe this all the industries are usually in flux. A lot of changes are happening. The teams are changing, projects are changing, and again, as a scientist, we tend to marry our projects, and we get really upset if that gets away. So we need to be ready to use our skills, whatever we learn from one project, to jump into new project and get started, because that is the reality. The government regulation changes or the budget changes, and the projects and team will change. It will affect you as well. So I think these two traits are really important.
And do you think that adaptability is it a very different culture than the university setting where you start on your thesis and you're doing your project and we're very much focused on that one project that we're doing, and sometimes you're helping other people, but it's not there. You don't necessarily need to adapt too much to changing environment. Is the environment in your industry, in your company, changing in such a way where the adaptability is noticeable because you have to adapt, you have to change?
Right. So I would say okay. So I might get a little philosophical here, Tommy. But what I want to say is, as a scientist, we define ourselves as a chemist, biologist, analytical scientist, but overall, we are thinkers, we are problem solvers. So uh, when in industry, for example, I was working on one particular project for development, and after working for it for 4 or 5 months, we realized that we don't have to work on this particular species and we need to change it. So that was like little heartbreaking, but I can still use all the learnings and use it in different species of animals that I was working on. So I would say that kind of adaptability, it's not always significant, but you just have it can happen very sudden and before you know it. And I think you need to be ready for it.
What about the adaptability, Vivek, of being able to work with so many different disciplines in a team setting and adapting, as you said, your communication, adapting how practical you are at shifting your train of thought to accommodate also what the discussion is, and so that you're contributing in a broader sense. Is that comparable in academia? Because we do have these discussions, right? We do have conferences and seminars and so on and so forth, right?
Right. I think it is somewhat comparable, and I think each academic lab is different. If somebody is working in an academic lab which is working with multiple or multidisciplinary collaborator, that transition will be easy. I would say it was a little challenging to me, but I was lucky enough that in my group we're working with somebody from engineering group, somebody from in vivo studies, and also we are in organic lab setup doing analytical chemistry. So that was some challenging, but not a lot. But I would say what really helps to adopt is your curiosity to learn new things. If you are curious to learn new things, it does get easier. Initially, when we start our work, if, as I said, if you want to make more and more impact, talking to more and more people, sitting more and more one-on-ones with different discipline, and understanding what they're really going to use with your data helps a lot to adopt, I would say.
That's a great point you make, because I think we lose sight of some of that in academia, right? That other people are supposed to use this information for their own utility, right? For their own
Right.
benefit, their own usage, and to improve their science. And so, but it's really different disciplines that are going to need your data, and they're going to apply it and move forward with the decision and so on and so forth. And it's interesting that you say that, because I wonder then if your adaptation from an academic scientist to an industry scientist is also some of that moldability and process of being able to communicate now with many different people, and also be thinking about the cost, be thinking about scaling the production and how much that's going to be, because somebody else is going to need that information, right? And so have you learned a lot about some of that production and the cost, or do you stay fairly focused in your scientific area?
I think so. Kind of the first part of your comment, I guess initially it's a very challenge, and slowly get molded into this in this workflow. I'm still in core R&D, so I'm not involved in every business aspect of it, but I do tend to attend seminars and make sure I understand the overview, although that may not be impacting me right away, but just getting an overall idea is always, I have found helpful. So no, not to answer directly, still not involved directly in that final pricing or budgeting.
But still, that information is somewhat relevant, right, for what you're doing.
Absolutely, yes.
And so, what do you think you know now that you didn't know when you were in academia, that you could say, okay, if you're a scientist in academia, you should be thinking about this if you want to be an industry scientist?
That's a tough one, Tommy. As I mentioned about practicality, I think one thing that I would have done differently is it's it's always great to do, have an expertise in one particular field and keep doing deep diving in that. But constantly thinking how it will be useful to others is, I think, a key. Because again, you can do great science, but if we cannot look in the ways to use that, it may be difficult to make an impact. So to do an impact, you always need to be aware of how that science will get applied. So I would say if I have to go back and I probably will do the same research that I did, but I would constantly look into, talk to people, for example, what engineer groups, there are biomedical engineers in Purdue, as well as biology people, chemistry. So when we are developing, for example, polymer-based gene delivery, I would like to see, hey, can we use this for some kind of different application for viral delivery versus microneedles versus I don't know, this can be useful uh, for example, we have the veterinary science. So would check with them, hey, can you use some of this for tests? So I will be very open about how I can use it. And again, I will not wait for the completion of my science. There is no completion. There is no completion, right? We can always do better. So there's no perfect time to talk to others. So just go and be open about it.
Yeah, totally. It never ends, right? You answer
Never.
one question and you get 10 new ones to answer. Um, Vivek, since you've been there, you said something that I think was key in communication, where you really said, when you're passionate about your science, you come and you start talking about it as if everybody else knew exactly what you're talking about. It's like drinking out of a hose versus drinking out of a glass of water.
Right.
Other than the advice to maybe conserve some of the some of the lingo or whatever it is, that enthusiasm, but maybe it's not conserve it, but what is some of the best advice you've gotten while you've been in industry, maybe from a colleague or your boss there or somebody, and you've kind of taken that advice to heart and start working on it?
So that's a good question, Tommy. I think I got few advices, but I do remember one particular advice that I got in my second year at Corteva from one of my senior colleagues. He was ready to retire, and he mentioned that always make yourself more employable. Like every day, make yourself more employable. And I really think about this. So it's what he meant is not really, in terms of perspective of getting more employment in the future or job switch or getting more salary. I think what he meant by that, when we learn more and more every single day, we have an opportunity to make more and more impact, and that can help you resolve if we are to solve the real world challenges. So more knowledge, more learnings, more practical knowledge, will be helpful, and those people will also get employment better. So I think always I take that advice really to my heart, and every day I think about, hey, um, I can keep working on this software that I already know. If I keep working on this, maybe I can do the 5 minute of job in 1 minute. But does that really make me? Does that really am I improving my knowledge, or can I try some other instrument, some other knowledge, some other software, and be not be expert on this one, but expert, or I would say kind of expert in both of them. So I think that is something I feel like a great advice I got.
That's great advice for everybody watching, because it helps us all really reflect on how we can improve and how we can be more marketable. And to everybody that is online listening in today, I think it's important to realize that work on yourself and work on your skills so that you become more marketable, um, more employable, if you want. Um, what do you miss about working in academia?
Ah, I miss Purdue campus for sure. In terms of working in academia, I would say something that I really miss is those research seminars, the opportunity to attend research seminars at Purdue. And being said that, as an industry, we do have a lot of research seminars, but the core difference is everything that we do are to solve the real world problem. And not that academic is not looking into it, but in academia, if you have an idea, whether it will solve the problem or not in future, that's a different story. But the fresh science, just that aspect of it, I really like. Some, hey, I didn't think about this. Somebody just come with something really fresh. We are going to use it or not, that's different. But that that opportunity is rare if you're not in academics. So I think I definitely miss that part.
So, Vivek, do you think it would be good for us to set up a seminar series where we present Purdue-based research to industry? Do you think that would resonate with industry? 1 hour a week, lunch and learn type of thing with Purdue research?
I think any industry, I can talk about my team and Corteva will be really looking forward to that. We do have some of the analytical folks from Purdue that we have some seminars like this, but having in general Purdue lunch and learn series, we will love to have that. At least I would like to see that.
Awesome. Awesome. I think we'll take note of that.
Yes.
It would be great. Um, and so, you know, I understand the seminars, and that you do get some seminars, but maybe the different variety of seminars that you get at Purdue and the different areas. What would you say you would miss now that you've experienced the difference between academic science, laboratory culture, and industry science and laboratory culture? What would you say you would miss the most if you left or you were not working in the industry lab?
I think I'm not sure if I can talk in general industry, but I can talk about my current role, for example. So current
Yeah.
agri-science role. Here, I do get an opportunity to know what are the agrochemical regulation in Europe versus Japan versus Asia, what the politics is changing in terms of, what kind of pesticide would be favored versus not. Where are the hunger problems? Where are the, one particular pest problems? How Europe is changing their guidelines to accommodate certain concerns. I think that makes me feel like kind of connected to the real world problems right away. And I think if I'm not in this space, I would definitely miss that. I think when I was in academics, when we attend conferences, I did get opportunity to know what research are going on, but what I'm able to observe right now is the high level things that impact the day-to-day life of people. So I think I would miss not knowing that.
Nice. Yeah. I think having that realistic, real data
Hmm.
quality, right?
Right.
It's so important, and sometimes it's an important piece of guidance for us in academia too, meaning come out and look around and get some actual data that you understand what is the impact of the work that you're doing and how eventually that work will have an impact, and in those topic areas. I want to take time to open it up to the group and wonder if anybody has any questions. Please, you can raise your hand. Let us know that you're interested in asking a question of Vivek. And if you're not going to ask a question, then I have more questions to ask, if that's okay. I don't see any hands raised at the moment. Vivek, what do you think is the greatest way that somebody who is interested in an industry job, as being an industry scientist, what should they do? How should they go about it? How did you go about finding and landing a job? I know coming from India, you also had other challenges other obstacles that you had to superate. So how did that work, and what guidance, what would you say to people that are in similar shoes?
That I would love to talk about that. You're right. I did struggle in this process. It's not easy to find job in industry, but when I'm in industry right now, what we see is we don't see candidates. We are really looking for candidates, what we need, and we are not able to see. And I think the gap is based totally. I think the gap is due to not lack of science, but lack of interview skills that I have noticed. Um, I would say even though when I was not prepared to do my interview, so after fifth year, when I actually interviewed, I started interviewing for my third year, and I had a really bad experience where I couldn't even talk in front of the people. So I know my science, I know everything, but when a person is asking questions, it's sometimes can be, at least it was for me, for nerve waking, and I'm sure I'm not giving him what I really want to explain. So throughout in last year, I did practice very very much in front of mirror. And this is not, there is, initially I thought this is weird, that you have to practice the answers, but I think um, if you're not used to it, when a person asks questions, it's not easy to explain in simple words, and I think that's where you're practicing for. So many times, I also in my industry, I do take interviews also, and I realize that this person clearly knows the science, but it's so difficult for the person to explain that how he works in the lab. But the resume is great; it's 4 page long, and I think if that person can just work a little bit on the interview skills, that will help a lot. That will help not only the industry but also the person. So I think that's one thing. And second thing that helped me is, I think there was a professor called Joseph Desimone. It was in my second year that somebody, he's a big shot in drug delivery, gene delivery. So he came and he mentioned that he had an opportunity to talk with Bill Gates about getting funding for his research. And all the time he got was there were 30 floors in the building. So they had to go from 30th floor to the first floor. And that's the time he got. So he was like, how can I explain in like 20, 30 seconds, Bill Gates, that I need this many $1 million budget for my proposal? So I think he mentioned that time that you need to be able to explain your research or what you do within a minute. And I think that's a skill that you should always be ready to talk to anybody, that you should be able to talk what you do like in a minute. And so the science that you do for 4 years or 5 years in a minute. And I think that is something one should always work on.
Definitely. And again, I think you mentioned personal improvement, right? Personal communication skills, personal, uh, you gotta have to have confidence talking to people. Did you get some of that confidence looking at yourself in the mirror and answering some of those questions in the mirror? I mean, some of these are techniques that I know help people to, because we don't realize, like I'm talking to you right now and I see myself on camera and saying, oh man, you're making some weird faces. You're like,
You're
look
not.
at your eyebrows. You look a little weird. You're talking a little weird. Hear some inflections in your voice, things like that that we don't realize but do come across as other nature, other, signals that people pick up. And so some of those techniques for improving communication are so important, right?
Right.
What about confidence building and having confidence that your science is good and that you
Mm-hmm.
have a good skill set or you have good techniques? I don't want to put you in a difficult situation, but I am curious to what happened to you when you froze up and you couldn't even talk to the people, and how you have worked to, improve that and be able to then do it. And did it just come out of practice of doing it over and over and over again, or were there other techniques that helped you?
Sure. I think, as you said, the confidence piece has multiple aspects, but yeah, practicing in front of mirror is helpful. But I realized that just that is not enough. You actually have to go to interview. You actually have to get ready and just go to any interview where you know you're gonna get rejected, but just go for it. Even when once you go get out of that fear, that comfort zone, you will realize how much you improve in the second interview you go for, and gradually that changes a lot. So you have to get out there, dress up and just talk. And
Yeah.
it will be terrible first couple of times, at least it was for me, and soon it changes. So addition to the mirror technique. Other thing is at Purdue in my first year, I think that was our orientation, there was a presidential talk and somebody mentioned, some alumni, that you are at Purdue and you are not here by chance. So throughout your career, you will have self-doubts, but don't doubt because you're not here by chance. So if you are at Purdue, you are already there in the in United States at least, and you're not here by chance. And nobody's research is perfect. Mine was not, and I know it's never perfect. It's never complete. So don't regret that. Just be confident on what you have done. You'll be surprised how important what little you might have done could be for the next person.
That's great, great advice. And I read a really interesting statistic that said 90% of all the scientists that have ever existed in all of human civilization, 90% are alive today. So, that means it's been a very short history of scientific advancement, and everybody is making a contribution. So we should all feel proud of your contributions.
Great statistics. Yeah.
Yeah, Vivek, we have a question that says, how are the job roles different for someone who completed their master's versus someone who completed their PhD? So in industry, what do you see those differences are? How are those job roles or limitations for career progress in industry between a master's and a PhD?
Okay. So in general, in my view, that I have seen at Corteva, if you are eager, you are ready to contribute. I have seen people just with bachelor's degree to a really top position ultimately. But having a master's or PhD does give you a good start. If you have a PhD, it does. If there are leadership position open, you will be considered in priority. However, it doesn't mean that you're a master student if you have, PhD is considered kind of this person has 4 to 5 years of experience versus just somebody who's masters. But if you're masters with few more years of experience and if you have that fire, it's not going to stop you in terms of where you want to go. So I won't say there's a rule that you have done PhD versus masters or even bachelors that will stop you. Uh, you just have to fight. I have seen PhDs. If you're a PhD, but if you don't contribute, it's not necessarily that by default you'll go to the next position. Master's or bachelor's position can go further too.
And so, but what are the types of jobs? Like what
Sure.
jobs can you find if you just have a master's versus a PhD?
Um, it may be a difficult question for me to answer. I think I see a clear difference between somebody with a bachelor's degree versus any master's advanced degree. Typically, when you are just a bachelor's degree, you get a job of technician or routine level. Once you are master's or PhD, you can right away get a job of scientist. In If you are a PhD, I think there are opportunities to lead a technical team a little bit earlier as compared to your master's students. But again, I think it all going to depend on how you perform. But regardless, MS or PhD, you will have a scientist level jobs. Most probably you will be expected to work in lab, and slowly within a year or two, you will be expected to contribute more. Like so, initially you'll be an individual contributor, but soon you'll be contributor within a team. So you can be in a consulting team, you can still be in lab, or you can be a part of a bigger project.
And if we were to extend that question to postdocs, what about postdocs? What kind of roles do they get? And maybe I'll ask a question that I think for many of us would love to understand is what is the pay scales difference if you come in as a master's, as a PhD, and as a postdoc? Are those differences very broad? And again, so let's start with the postdoc. What kind of roles do you get?
Sure.
And does it again obviously depends on the person, but what are these roles that they can get?
Absolutely. So I think for postdoc, there are a couple of situations. One is when somebody is a postdoctorate for 1 or 2 years, or someone is being doing a postdoc for like 5 to 6 years. So if 1 to 2 years, it is almost equivalent to PhD, I would say. And what if we are looking, for example, if we are looking for a metabolism discipline, we can hire someone from academics who is a fresh analytical chemist, who can be fresh biochemist. It may not matter because we are ready to teach if that person is ready to learn.
Yeah.
Postdoc are usually specialized. So if there is an opportunity for example, if somebody is doing work on electrochemistry, so we do have some particular electrochemistry problems, so we'll be looking at that person. And then, at least in Corteva and many industries that know of, they do have industrial postdoc options. And in terms of salaries, I think those typically range from 70 to 80K. And as a PhD level scientist, uh, well, it depends on position, but if you're applying for the same position as PhD and postdoc together, that first 1 to 2 year of postdoc, that will go around, anywhere from 110 to 130 today. Uh, in terms of if you are postdoc for 5 to 6 years, then uh, I think it's nothing against, but I think you are considered kind of specialist in one particular field, and the opportunities will depend on what are the requirements of in that particular field. Um, in terms of masters, I think the salary, I don't want to say a number, but it changes a lot industry to industry, but anywhere we can expect from 70 to 100K. And positions would be scientists as well. It's just that to lead a team, you may need a few more years of training.
And Vivek, you mentioned too that, let's say, if you start in the lab and after a year or two, then you get to participate a little bit more. Um, but what are, people are trying to, they're posting questions on how do you typically get recognized in your job efforts so that you get promoted? And, what are some of those contributions that you need to make? So let's say if you are working in the lab, is it about do you do presentations? Do you do lab meetings and you need to present your work and so on and so forth? And is that how you start to move up the chain, is in your performance there, your communication there?
Sure. And I think there is no one straight answer to that. But what, in my view, I think first thing first is you have to do your job. So basically, there are projects, there are deadlines. You finish it on time. If you cannot finish it, just communicate that there are some hurdles, and that is fine. So that's one main step. There is no exception to that. But the second thing is, if you are doing your job, great. But if you are sitting in a team meetings, and if you're not contributing there, it may restrict your chances to grow. The reason is it's not that when there is a team meeting you must talk, but I guess if you are curious enough and if you are ready to learn, you will have questions or you will have comments. So I think in a company of 10,000 employees, if you want to stand out in the team meetings, you have to talk, you have to come, and obviously you have to make sure what you're talking is relevant, but you have to express your interest, express your curiosity, and not be afraid to ask any questions. So that gives little visibility, and maybe you'll realize that soon people will recognize you that, hey, this person knows he has some expertise on metabolite or metabolism or talks. So next time there are meetings set up, they will invite you. So getting that recognition that, okay, getting uh, gluing that particular field with you, your name and face, I think is important. And initially in first 3 years, establishing that is very, very important. That somebody know, hey, I have challenge with some biochemistry related issue, and this is the person, go-to person. Having that is super important. And once you get that, I think it's kind of snowballing effect. Then you get invited into multiple meetings. You will even get tired of attending all the meetings, but you'll be recognized so much. So associating yourself with one particular technique, tool, or project, particular discipline is important for first 3 years.
Yeah. And there is another question, and I think it's an important one. We did talk about the differential in salaries, but when you are a postdoc and when you're just out of your PhD, do those two people compete for the same positions in the company? Are people reading postdoc and PhD resumes for the same position?
I I think the short answer would be yes. They would be competing for the same position. One advantage, and that can be sometimes disadvantage. Sorry to say that, but if you're a postdoc, you get specific into one particular field for 2 3 years, and if industry is looking for that particular problems or particular project, then you will be favored over PhD student because you have more expertise. But that doesn't really stop that, oh, this person is really specific in this, it means he cannot be hired for other work. No, that doesn't happen. But then we, as an interview panel, I guess you will always be evaluated based on how easy you are ready to switch or adapt to a different projects, or how easy you are to contribute to your background into some leveraging into different skills.
And is there opportunity for growth there? Like if you, so right now you're an analytical chemist, but let's say you did want to learn a little bit more about, I don't know, molecular or metabolism or whatever. Is there opportunity for that type of growth within the industry?
Absolutely. I can talk about Corteva, I agree, but I do know all the affiliate industry are similar ways. Company does not want to good, get rid of a good employee. Company always value a good employee. So if somebody wants to, has a special interest in something else, you can talk to your leader and you will be provided necessary resources. And I can give my personal example. So I had zero experience in metabolite identification when I joined Corteva, but I've been lucky, fortunate that I expressed my interest. I got a mentor who trained me for a few months. I got opportunity to learn short courses, and I was able to enjoy it, and I am kind of leading that role in my team. So yes, you can switch. There is no narrow way that you came for this, you should do this. No, once you join, obviously you have to prove yourself, but you can switch your interests, you can switch your teams easily.
And how easy or difficult is it to lead a team on a project? And what might be some of the challenges that you might face in industry? Because in academia, you can imagine, okay, so you have students and they show up or they don't show up or they went to Harry's the night before or whatever, you know. So we're dealing with some of that. But how is it in industry? What are some of the challenges?
I think when you become a leader, I'm not a leader. I have a small team, but I'm not a people leader. So there are two kind of leaderships, right? You can be a technical leader or you can be a manager leader. So being good with people or people person is not uh, is not a hallmark of a scientist. I think it's not easy for me. So I think if you want to be a leader, apart from good at what you do, you have to be really good with dealing with people. And sometimes those are natural for some people, or sometimes you have to learn it. So I think that is a challenge a scientist or many scientists do face when they want to become a leader. I have seen some people who got an opportunity because they expressed, but then they don't like people leadership part. They go back. They like the lab part, so they go back. But there is nothing wrong. You always can try and see if that's for you. If not, you can switch back to what you've been doing. So, um, uh, something to add to that. To grow, you don't always have to be leader. That I realize, at least in Corteva, you can be somebody who really works in lab and expert in it, and you can go in a fellow ladder where you probably won't people won't report to you as a leader, but you will still be recognized as a fellow. You will have promotions as a fellow, and or you can be, keep improving your leadership skill, and then you have bigger and bigger teams.
And how long does that usually take, so that we kind of know what does that timeline look like?
I think I think that does change a lot depending on need, depending on if somebody has left a company or if new team is forming. But I think you can start being a people leader as soon as 5 years. You can start coach small team within first 3 years. Sorry, after 3 years of your training, and within 5 to 6 years you can get a small leadership roles. But I have seen most of the leaders I have, they with a good size team, like 10 people or 20 people, they've been with the company for 8 to 10 years.
Yeah. So no, and I guess as you keep referring, it really all depends on the person, because I can imagine some people do move up fairly quickly, or they move laterally or whatever, and it depends on their character, right? And what they want to do, what they want to contribute. Do you find that there is good potential for advancement, good potential for you to, is that what they want you to do? Do they want you to be the best analytical scientist there is? But do they also want you to learn enough about how the whole business works so that you can help and lead teams? Is that something that they want to incentivize you to do?
Absolutely. I think they want each employee, I guess, to do their best. So, and to do their best, I think company is ready to provide all the resources and want to make sure that the person or employee is very happy in the company. So I think if it's kind of win-win situation. If the employee does well, the company does well. So if I think more I do, company is going to support. Okay, you need these resources to do it. There is no stopping. I would say the limiting factor for my growth is just me, how much I want to do, how much I'm interested in. There is no limit to how far I want to go.
That's awesome. And tell us, just in closing here, what about the work-life balance? Can you work on weekends if you want to, or is that really not really part of the culture? Nobody works on weekends, so you shouldn't really be working on weekends. You should take your weekend to relax and do what you need to do to unwind.
I think there's a lot work-life flexibility, and it was further evidented in COVID, but even before that. So there is no, clock punching thing that you have to come at 8 and leave at 5. It's fine if family happens, you take off in a day. If you want to work in the night, that's fine. And also, I think all the company cares is that the project is done or the data is generated, but it's not, if you really have to take care of your kid, you have to go somewhere, it's very understanding about it. And I think that's why I see people staying here for 30, 35 years. So it's very understanding, and I don't think there are issues. In terms of weekend, it's up to you. Some people, let's say they may not be able to work on weeks, so they work on weekend, but you cannot work in lab alone. That's a safety procedure. So you have to have at least 2 people in a lab when you're working. And usually if you don't find a coworker, you're not allowed to work by yourself. So you just have to make sure there's someone else in the lab.
Absolutely. And I think that's true for safety in any lab, really. It should be good practice. One more question from the group is, what if you want to change companies? How would you go about obtaining recommendations and transferring? Have you seen that happen?
I do not think in my understanding, when you switch from one company to other, I don't think the other company really requires a recommendation. Usually recommendation is required when you jump from academic to even academics. I don't think recommendation is very common, or maybe one recommendation from your advisor. But when you switch companies, I I know friends who switch companies. I don't think a recommendation later is required. It will be an uncomfortable position for the employee and the employer.
Sure, sure. Really, thank you so much, Vivek Badwaik, analytical scientist at Corteva AgriScience in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. How's life in Indianapolis? Are you enjoying it down there?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Initially, as I said, I missed the Purdue campus, but I had opportunity to stay in downtown, and downtown Indy nightlife is awesome. So, and we have Broad Ripple here. If you haven't
Yeah,
visited, should visit that area too. Right now, I stay in more quieter area. It's pretty nice.
great, great. Well, congratulations on all your success, Vivek, and thank you so much for taking time to speak to us today and letting us peer a little bit into your life and how into your success in industry at Corteva and a little bit about your experience. So we're so thankful you took the time to speak to us. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you all the audience for listening to me. Hope I was able to share something important, and a great honor. Thank you so much.
Well, great. And I want to invite everybody to a next Pathfinder session. And please stay tuned. We will be posting these on our YouTube channel, so look out for them. Thank you so much, Dr. Badwake. Take
Thank you.
care. Thank you.